Well, good afternoon and welcome to our January 10th, 2022 regular meeting of Belleville City Council. We are gathering today under the terms and conditions of the province's modified Step 2 restrictions, which are currently scheduled to be in effect until January the 27th. And we are all aware of the seriousness of these times. And last week, the decision was made that today's City Council meeting would be held virtually. I will also confirm that our meeting on January 24th, 2022 will also be held virtually. I'd like to thank our staff for assisting in the setup of this electronic meeting of Belleville City Council. And I also want to take a moment and thank all members of council for their cooperation and flexibility in meeting under these unusual circumstances as permitted by the provincial government. While we all know that the need for cooperation is important during the best of times, these virtual meetings are difficult and awkward. I look to my colleagues for extra cooperation as we conduct the business necessary for the operations of the City of Belleville. For those watching on the city streaming service or on our YouTube channel or on your TV, I would point out that our agenda and all reports are on the City of Belleville website at www.belleville.ca. And you can find under the agenda, minutes, and live meeting video an icon. If you click on that on the left side of the screen, it'll take you to a calendar. If you click on the January 10th on that calendar, it'll bring you to the agenda for today's meeting. There is a hyperlink included in the agenda in the event that anyone wishes to look at the reports so they can follow along with us. I will call the meeting to order and state that all members of council are present. I am here at City Hall and all members are present electronically. And I will now ask the Director of Corporate Services and the City Clerk, Mr. Matt McDonald, to lead us in a moment of reflection.
May we be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Help us to be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, always having respect for others so that we may serve the people of our city in a helpful manner and for the good of all.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to just let the public know that at 2:45 today, Belleville City Council considered approval of a following resolution that took place in a very brief open session immediately prior to entering it in camera, and that we met to discuss the following 5 bullets. Bullet number 1, in-camera report number DCS 2022-01 regarding potential acquisition or disposition of land pursuant to section 2392C of the Municipal Act. Bullet number 2, in-camera report number DHR 2022-01 regarding labor relations or employee negotiations pursuant to section 2392D of the Municipal Act. Bullet number 3, in-camera report number DHR 2022-02 regarding labor relations or employee negotiations pursuant to section 2392D of the Municipal Act. Bullet number 4, in-camera report number ECDEV 2022-02 regarding potential acquisition or disposition of land pursuant to section 2392C of the Municipal Act. And bullet number 5, review of the regular in-camera meeting minutes of December 13th, 2021. And I think I'm just going to need a motion to approve that council goes into in-camera for that. Can I get it moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Alsap? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And I think I should have done that before, so I appreciate everybody's understanding that it's been a while since we've been meeting virtually. On the agenda, I'll go to item number 3, which is the disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you. I have 8B2 and the subsequent bylaw 2022-02.
Okay, so 8B2, and which bylaw did you say, Councillor McCaw?
It was 2022-02.
Okay, perfect, good. Anybody else have any items that they wish to declare a conflict on? Seeing none, there are no public meetings today, so we'll move to item number 5, which is reading and confirmation of the special council meeting minutes of December the 6th, 2021, the regular council meeting minutes of December 13th, 2021, and the regular in-camera meeting minutes of December 13th, 2021. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Thompson and Councillor Alsop. Any questions or comments? All in favor? It's carried. There are no deputations today and there is no correspondence. So we'll move to item 8, which is a motion to go in a committee of the whole to hear and consider reports, passing of recommendations and resolutions with myself and the chair. Moved by Councillor Sanderson and Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. So we just have 2 items under 8A reports, and those items warrant individual attention from council. 8A1, Economic and Destination Development Committee Strategic Plan Updates. The Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives Report Number ECDEV 2022-01. The resolution is that pursuant to the Manager of Economic and Strategic Initiatives Report Number ECDEV 2022-01, Council approves the updated strategic plan for the Economic and Destination Development Committee. Moved by Councillor Kelly, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Any questions or discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'm just going to put it out there. The question I had when it came to agenda setting was, why are we dealing with this again? I think the committee has had several cracks at strategic plans and updates. I certainly hope that this will be the last one that we will see this year. You know, it's let's see how things go with the current structure in place, and focus on that business, please. And then all committee chairs come September should be having a discussion with members of their committees to find out if there are any recommendations and any suggested changes for next term at the completion of this term. I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. 8A2, purchase order for the application of Reclamite. It is a General Manager, Transportation and Operation Services Report Number GMTOS 2022-02. And the resolution is that in accordance with Section 30.3, Sole and Single Sourcing, approval and reporting of the city's purchasing bylaw number 2021-99, the quotation from Superior Road Products be accepted for the application of Reclamite in the amount of a total of $110,979.28, and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to sign the acceptance agreement on behalf of the corporation of the city of Belleville, and that the city clerk be authorized to affix the corporate seal. Mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Carr and Councillor Alsop. Any questions or comments on this? Councillor Millette.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Is Mr. Reid present on the feed at all? Joe?
Yeah,
Hello, Joe.
I'm
Here
here.
you are. Hi, Joe. Yeah, sorry, you're at the bottom of my screen. Yeah, I looked into the this Reclamite, and you know, it may be a rather non-interesting inside baseball thing, but I think a little bit of an explanation of the value of this material, if you could briefly. I was quite impressed. I looked at the product online and the benefits of it. But if you could, Joe, if you could just spell that out a little bit.
Yeah, so we've been using Reclamite now for 2 or 3 years. We've been just gradually doing a little bit more and more of it each year. What it does is, as you appreciate, it preserves the asphalt and extends the life of the pavement. And what it does is this Reclamite product soaks into the asphalt and rejuvenates the AC content. Over time, oxidization happens with the asphalt cement within, and the rejuvenator goes in and does a chemical reaction with it, and it rejuvenates it and helps extend it.
Okay, and just so that everyone paying any attention at all to this, having read up on it and looked at the environmental impacts, it's minimal to none. And so just so that anybody is worried about the potential of this chemical application, and again, as chair of the Green Task Force, it kind of behooves me to pay attention to these things. But this material itself is a benign treatment that in no way affects the surrounding environment. Am I correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, and it, from a standpoint of, environment, it does help us with our carbon footprint. It goes down, it soaks into it, and it helps us prolong the age of the pavement.
Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Millet. Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Sandison. Go ahead, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, on the quote, and more, and obviously there's other, it says the budget amount is $350,000. So this came in at 110. Is there other aspects in that budget that would be using up the other 250,000? Or how does that look out?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Thompson, that 350,000 is a part of our sealing program. It also includes our slurry seal application, which has just been put out for tender now. We'll probably see that back in front of council in February.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
All right, Councillor Sandison.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to add for the benefit of the team that Cloverleaf Drive was done, I think it was probably the first or one of the very first that had the reclamite treatment applied. And if you wanted to test drive it and go up and take a look at it, it's in really good shape, even 2 years later. Thank you.
Yep.
Great, thank you. Anyone else on this item? So I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. We'll now move to consent items where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. And Councillor McCaw, I note your conflict. If it's not pulled, then we can just deal with it through the general motion. So I'll go around the table. I'll ask if anyone would like to pull anything, starting with Councillor McCaw. No. Councillor Sandison?
No.
Councillor Alsop?
8B1.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
8B1 and 8B6.
Thank you. Councillor Carr?
8B6, please.
Okay. Councillor Feeney? Councillor Feeney?
8B1.
Okay. And Councillor Millet?
Already been pulled. Thanks.
Okay. And ending up with Councillor Kelly.
No, thank you. Already pulled. Thank you.
Okay. So then the following agenda items shall be approved with the exception of 8B1, 8B6. Did I miss anything? I know there were a number of people who had them. So 8B1 and 8B6 are what we're pulling, correct? All right, so can I get a mover in a second? Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor, it's carried. So we'll deal first with 8B1, which is a recommendation report for proposed zoning bylaw amendment, a bylaw amendment for bylaw number 10245, 135 Station Street, the city of Belleville. It is KGF Capital Realty and Eco View Consulting Services. It is the policy planners report number PP 2205. And the resolution is that the Planning Advisory Committee recommends the following to City Council: that zoning bylaw number 10245 as amended be amended by amending the site-specific zone for 135 Station Street, residential 7th density, R712, by adding the special provision to permit 30 additional dwelling units, reduce minimum required lot area per dwelling unit, reduce minimum required parking spaces per dwelling unit, define permitted uses for commercial space, reduce the maximum gross floor area of commercial space, and incorporating zoning relief from past minor variances, and that a bylaw amending zoning bylaw number 10245 being a bylaw to regulate the use of land and the height, bulk, location, size, floor area, spacing, character, use of buildings be prepared by for council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Carr. Councillor Alsop, you had asked this to be pulled. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak to this because this is obviously something that's been before the planning committee. And this is a situation where someone was building an apartment building that was going to have commercial on the ground floor. They found that the commercial use on the ground floor wouldn't need the entire space. They've converted some of that space without expanding the footprint of the building into more affordable housing. So there'll be 30 additional units in that building for a total of more than 130 units. And I believe that the commitment is that the entire building will be affordable rental housing. So we're very excited about that, particularly in that Riverview part of the city that does need some development at current. And so we're very excited to be able to bring this forward and see this come to fruition.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything they'd like to? Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great opportunity for the city to add these units. I have just one concern. I understand we're reducing the parking, the number of parking spaces. When we originally authorized this building, what was the number of parking spaces that was allowed, and how many did we reduce it by because of the new ones? Because I'm getting concerned they were only allowed so many with the building preferred originally, and now all of a sudden we're adding 30 units, which is great, but I'm concerned about the parking.
Sure. I see Director Ashton is joined us. Good afternoon, Director Ashton. Did you hear Councillor Thompson's questions regarding the parking adjustments?
Yes. So I think this, through you, the parking originally, basically it's the same amount of parking spots that were originally proposed. So when this came before council, I think that was, actually this was one of my first applications that I worked on. Parking was a consideration. I think there was a lot of discussion through this application about affordable housing perhaps didn't require as much parking. So after this application, in which they did provide, I think it's 0.84 is the current rate, right? No, actually 0.84 is the current rate now with the additional 30 units. It was, believe it was about 0.97, I want to say, is what the original application was. So after this application, one of the things that council wanted to promote was sort of a policy for reduced parking for affordable housing, anywhere from 0.5 to 0.75 units, or sorry, parking spaces per dwelling unit. And so with this new application, even with the 30 additional units, it's 0.84, which actually still exceeds the parking requirements under the council approved policy for reduced parking for affordable housing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ashton. And the reason I get concerned is because as the chair of the Transportation Committee, the one thing we have to be concerned with is that we don't get people with no parking spots there and have to park out on the street someplace, and that become a concern. So as long as we're in our guidelines with the parking. And the other aspect that I was concerned with when I was over and looking is the snow removal on that property, because there is one house that's certainly down on the north end of it. It's quite a drop. I would want to caution, and I know that's not our position, but the snow removal could become a factor on that one household.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions or comments on this? And so Director Ashton, just following up on Councillor Thompson's question, when we first considered the previous application and we reduced the parking from 1.25, I believe, to that lower number of 0.8, part of the rationale was that if in the future there were significant parking demands, there was some green space that would be able to be converted to parking because of the proximity to the Moira River Valley, which has got significant green space along that area. Am I remembering the right application on that?
Yeah, I think the application, I think, considered parking more towards Albion Street and using some semi-permeable pavers, I believe. Yeah.
So that way, if this building was generating so much on-street parking demand, there is the ability for them to be able to use some more space on the site for parking, which can take care of that concern that Councillor Thompson had brought forward. So good. All right, anyone else? I will call the question. All in favor? It's carried. We'll now move to 8B6, which is the Ward 2 Transit Service Survey questions. It is the General Manager, Transportation and Operations Services Report number GMTOS 2022-01. And the resolution is that the General Manager of Transportation and Operations Services Report number GMTOS 2022-01 regarding Ward 2 Transit Service Survey questions be received as information. It's moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Thompson, you had raised this issue. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I agree with the questionnaire going out. I agreed last time. My concern is in the survey, there's no mention of what the possible cost would be on their taxes. And I think that leaves it pretty vague for the taxpayer or the residents to say they're agreed to it or not without putting some sort of, and that could be difficult, but I really believe in this questionnaire, there has to be something that refers to what it may cost on their taxes. That's my main concern with this questionnaire.
Thanks, Councillor Thompson. Well, I agree with you, and I think that the motion that we passed on December 13th bringing this was also vague, and it didn't explain what type of questions we wanted. It just said that a survey be done, and staff have put together their first crack at it, but I think we need to be much more directive in terms of what we want to see in that question, including, whether or not people feel that transit is a core urban service in a city like Belleville.
Yeah, and my concern is it's along that same scenario is there will be a cost to them, and they need to be able to say, yes, I'm in favor of it at whatever tax dollars it is, or no, I'm not. And there's that. So I believe if we're going to do the questionnaire, we should, but we need to add in there something with cost.
Okay, well, we'll try to see how the course of the conversation goes on that. But anyone else have any questions or comments on this? Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you. Well, the motion last time, and I don't want to get into it because we've already passed it, was quite clear that staff prepare a resident survey. Now, when a survey was prepared last time, there was actually 10 questions on it. It was a little bit more comprehensive and provided a little bit more context is what Councillor Thompson outlined. So I think it needs to be simple and straightforward. I think it needs to provide some context for residents so they know exactly what they're looking at. So I just have one question for staff before I make any more comments. As far as the sending out the survey in the interim tax bill, can that be targeted to specific properties that would fall within the Canifton urban and Canifton rural tax areas, so that it's going to the right property owner? Because as it stands now, question number one is, are you a Ward 2 property owner and pay taxes? Well, we know full well that residents on Blessington Road and Bethel Road and any other rural road are not paying for it, not getting the service, not part of this survey. So can the mail out be targeted to specific property owners within the appropriate catchment areas?
I wonder if Director Hines might be able to answer that question. Good afternoon, Director Hines. Your department handles the notice of assessment or the property tax bills that go out every year with the schedule. Did you understand Councillor Carr's question, and can you give us any comments on that?
Yes, I did, through the chair to Councillor Carr. We can investigate that with our billing printing provider to see if that is possible. I'm surmising that it is, but I haven't asked the question directly, so I would need to do that investigation.
So Director Hines, how many tax bills do you send out every year? Is it still that 18,700?
That's correct.
Range? Yeah, so, okay. So we'd be looking at overlapping probably postal codes to try to find, that's how it
Yeah,
would
I'm
work
not
probably?
sure. As I say, we contract out all of the printing and mail distribution of our bills. So we would have to work directly with our contract service provider to determine what their methodology would be, and if it is possible to only select a certain group for distribution.
Okay. Do you have a, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have a guesstimate of how long before you had that information? How long would it take for you to get an answer to
we
that?
can try and find out this week.
Okay. So certainly before
we'll
the,
find out as quickly as possible.
so certainly within the next 2 weeks.
Mhm.
You think? Okay, good. Councillor Carr?
Okay, thank you. So, and if that is possible, that's great. Certainly would shorten up any confusion. So I would say this, that if I was going to look at the questions, and we can't do a direct mail out, but to save any confusion, I would say that, are you a property owner and pay property taxes for a property in Canifton Urban and Canifton Rural and in the Transit Route 9 area? And simply staff then could put a link to the property tax calculator and map where you can plug in your address and you will confirm where you live within the property taxes. Very simple. So that would be question one. Question two, if you answered yes to question one, are you willing to partially fund Transit Route 9 through property taxes as part of service expansion? That needs to be a little bit more defined, because partially fund could mean many things to many people. I think the best thing is, if we look back to the first survey, question 9 refers to the fact transit in Ward 2 using a property assessed at $325,000 based on, and you can use 2020 tax rates. The increase to a tax bill would be approximately X number of dollars. And we, in this survey, because we're doing it in 2019, we were looking at 2018 taxes. Would you agree to a property tax increase to cover the transit costs? Very clear, very simple, but it provides context. And now I recognize that assessments will be different and people will have to judge accordingly to their property tax bill. The good part is that if this does go out with property taxes, they will have their bill in front of them and get an idea in terms of the assessed value. And then question 3 can just simply be for any comments. So I think at the end of the day, it doesn't make it complex, falls in line with the original intent of the survey, and that to provide some context for what they could potentially pay. And it's not lost on me that, depending on how this goes and where it goes, and the decisions that are made at budget time, that there are other things that can be investigated. The good part is, at the end of the day, we have an excellent transit system that's proven to be very agile and very modern. And when I look at our on-demand system and things that have been put in place, I think are sets us up great for the future. So this here is just to get as much information as possible as we make these financial decisions. So I would propose those as the questions for that particular survey. Provide a little bit more clarity, nothing too complex, and it will just give council a little bit more information in conjunction with ridership statistics, which again are extremely important when we look at user ridership and the interest in actually using the service. And so in conjunction, we'll have better information. So that's what I would propose for those questions. And that I would also say that I would amend the motion to say that the survey questions as amended be approved. And I would make that motion simply because at the end of the day, the original intent of the first motion was to get council approval on this particular survey. Thank you.
Okay, so are you making an amendment to the questions?
That's
the resolution we have before us right now.
Yeah.
Are there? So can I just ask General Manager Reid, because he is tasked with doing the survey. Mr. Reid, did you get the suggested changes that Councillor Carr has made for the line of questioning?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Panchak. Yeah, I have noted the amendments as noted, specifically around changing question 1 around Canton urban and rural. And the second question regarding adding in there that the increase would be based on a tax roll assessment of 325 as an example.
With the amount, right?
Yeah.
So
So
just before I get, I'm just going to deal with Councillor Carr first. Before I get that amendment on the floor, I just want to ask Mr. McDonald, Director McDonald. I have the resolution before me, but I don't have the comments that Councillor Carr made in terms of the changes. General Manager Reid does. What do we need for the resolution now so that Council can consider the amendment?
I mean, I've made notes as well as General Manager Reid. So from my perspective, Councillor Carr should clearly state what the amendment is very clearly, so that all of your colleagues know exactly what they're being asked to vote on as an amendment.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Carr, I know that you want to make that amendment. I'll let you do that now, and then I'll deal with, I think Councillor Sanderson I think he had a point of order. So what I'll do is I'll let the amendment be made first. So you can go through and say it clearly as Mr. McDonald said, and then we'll deal with the next, and then we'll get a seconder, and then we can proceed with considering the amendment.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
So, yep. So question one, are you a property owner and pay property taxes for a property in Canafton urban and Canafton rural tax area? And then I would suggest on the survey that we actually include the hyperlink to the City of Belleville home and property tax calculator, which would provide residents with a map. So if they're not sure of those terms, and we're familiar with them, but property owners in general may not be, they can pinpoint on their address where they are. So then
okay, so that'll be part of the amendment, is that you're adding in property taxes for Canafton and
urban
and rural,
Canafton rural, yeah,
with a hyperlink
to that property tax calculator page.
Okay,
so that'd be question one.
Yeah.
Question two is, if you answered yes to question one, as staff point out, are you willing to partially fund transit Route 9 through property taxes as part of service expansion? And as staff has provided, transit fares only cover a partial cost for operating the service. And then I would say, for example, and then to take question 9 from the first survey that staff had developed, that using a property assessed at $325,000 based on 2020 tax rates, the increase to a tax bill would be, and I've just did the calculations, $226.58. And that would be included there as an example to provide context. Those are my amendments.
Those are the two amendments.
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Carr is moving that. Councillor Sanderson, thank you for being patient. You were trying to get my attention then, and am I correct in you're trying to raise a point of order?
I was going to raise a point of order with question 3, but the way Councillor Carr has rephrased it using, for example, I have no issue.
Okay, so thank you. So Councillor Carr has made an amendment. Is there a seconder on the amendment? Councillor Alsop has seconded it. Councillor Carr, is there anything else you want to say about your proposed amendment?
No, thank you.
Okay. Can I just ask Director Hines to come back on? And so we've got the, we can set up that hyperlink on question 1, but on question 2, as Councillor Carr's requested the assessment, are you able, do you believe, to be able to provide what the partial cost of operating the service would be for residents in that part of the city based on our current budget and what the trial is going to be?
I would suggest just using what we're currently using for the urban area. I mean, we can try and rework. I do have one question though, and I understand that you're drawing in Canafton rural as well, and I was uncertain as to whether Route 9 covered Canifton urban and Canifton rural.
Councillor Carr?
Okay, and I guess to answer that question, I'll come back with a question to the director. Is the current map on the property tax calculator page with the city's website, is it up to date? For example, yeah, for example, when I look at it and I'll take Settlers Ridge and Caniff Mills, for example, according to the tax calculator map, that is designated Canifton rural.
Okay, well, to the best of my knowledge, the map is current. But I would want to confirm the exact route with Manager Reed just to make sure that we had addressed it correctly.
Okay, so if I could, Mayor Panchak, and I agree, I don't want any confusion. So if that is incorrect and the map is incorrect, then obviously that should be corrected so citizens have the ability to go and reference the proper area. Because when I look at the breakdown right now on the 4 tables, Canifton urban includes a little bit along the Highway 62 corridor, and then Canifton urban also includes the old village of Canifton. But when you're getting into the new developed areas, according to the city's website, Canifton rural is still listed there. That's a little confusing, and I'm not sure if that's correct either, and that's why I've asked the question. But as long as the map is up to date and we're referencing the correct area, because Transit Route 9 at the end of the day goes through the Canifton village, but also does go through the new subdivisions and other pre-existing areas along, say, Maitland Drive, for example, both sides.
We can confirm the status of the map and make sure that everything is properly identified. And if that is the case, then we can carry on as suggested.
Okay, so anything else, Councillor Carr, on to it? Okay.
No, that's fine.
Anyone else have any comments on the amendment? So we're dealing right now with the amendment on the motion. Councillor McCaw.
Thank you, through you. Well, I agree that we do need to have some, approximate costs for homeowners. Personally speaking, to me, I don't like the way that question 2 is worded. To me, it seems leading. It doesn't seem in a positive way. I would rather see it say something like, if you answered yes to question 1, would you be in support of continuing with the Route 9 expansion at a cost of whatever that is based on a certain assessment house? To me, that seems, the way it's written now is a little bit negative to me. I would like to see it presented more in a positive light, but that's just my personal feeling on how I read that question.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you very much. Anyone else on the amendment? So, Councillor Carr, can I ask a question to you? I think, obviously the question at the December meeting passed. I believe it was on a 6-3 vote. So there's support for it and it's going to go through. I wonder if we approve the amendment and then we table the motion for it to come back to us written in format so it's clear. Director Hines has an opportunity to look into that Canifton urban and rural situation, how it fits with the village of Canifton, as well as they get information regarding if we can insert this in the people who are affected by this. And then have that come to the meeting on the 24th, and then we can, approve it then. That would give them still enough time to get it out for the, it should. We'd have, Director Hines, when are we expecting the interim assessment to go out to people in that part of the city?
I believe they'll be going out in February.
So if we were to kind of like bookmark that we're going to be doing this, and then council will just give final approval on the 24th, if that's the case, and then you would still have time to have that go out with that.
I will have to, I'll have to touch base with taxation staff to find out what the schedule is, because we do have a schedule with our printers and mail distribution company, and we do have to provide them with information within so many days before distribution. So I can't confirm that at the moment.
Okay, thank you. So Councillor Carr, what I'd be willing to do is if you would consent to that we would table it until the next meeting. If the 24th is too late for us to be able to get that in, I'll call a special meeting before so we can deal with that item, put it aside, be able to approve it, give the clear direction to staff. I'm just a little concerned how we're making the amendment here today, and I think we would want to to get this correct the first time we sent it out and not have any issues. Before we finish dealing with the amendment, would that be something that you would be okay with?
Yes. Again, I didn't realize that we were going to be dealing with some sparse questions to begin with, but certainly don't mind proposing that. And also, while I do have the floor, I would be willing to accept the suggested wording that Councillor McCaw had proposed for question number 2, in terms of just rewording how that question is asked. I think that's a good language in which to consider.
Good. All right, so I think we're getting some consensus moving along. Are there any other questions anybody thinks we should add? I don't want to get into 35 questions, but right now we have 3 questions. We have 2 questions that we're asking for information on, and then the third that we're going to be asking for comments. Is there anyone else that feels that there should be anything else included? For example, I might suggest that we talk about the fact of our disability service, or accessibility service, I should say, as part of the service in in the city. If no one else agrees, that's fine. We don't have to put it in there, but that would be one thing that I would suggest, is that a lot of people don't understand that accessibility and transit are tied. Those both are in parts of the city where we have that service, and we'd have to make a decision on that. Councillor Feeney?
I agree. I think that's a very good idea, because some people might look at the survey and say, well, I don't take transit, so it doesn't mean anything to me. But if they understand that it also means that people that have accessibility needs in their community would be served, I think that would be helpful. Okay.
We would have time to have that come back at the next meeting, and then we can pull it out if people don't like the way it's put in there. But I think that would be helpful. So, anyone else have any other questions that they would want to have consideration for to be included in the survey? Councillor Carr?
Yeah, thank you. I certainly understand the importance of the mobility bus, and I'm trying to be careful that we're staying sharp within the confines of this motion, but and I don't want to get into the debate of possibilities. But it's not lost on me in terms of the first survey that there was an appetite within the public for an on-demand service, and I made reference to that earlier. And so even with the mobility bus, for example, is actually considered on demand, because you have to order it up in advance and schedule it accordingly. Now, the fares are such that they're still subsidized as well by property taxes, but there are other options we can look at, and this is going down a road that I don't necessarily want to travel today, but I don't want to get into a situation where we're excluding possibilities with this survey, because again, I still think that there are options available. So when I even look at mobility bus, for example, an on-demand version with a fare that's specific to a user pay system, for example, is something that can be explored. And that's not for today's discussion, but that's certainly something that we can look at. We have an excellent on-demand service that I think that we can continue to capitalize on. But I think a question about mobility bus is fair. And I would certainly think that it's important, because I think people just always go to the default of the regular service, and mobility bus should be considered.
Okay, let's see what we can work on in terms of crafting a question that would be acceptable, and we'll go there. So we have an amendment on the floor. I'm going to ask for us to vote on the amendment. If the amendment, I see you, Councillor Sanderson, I'll get right back to you, but I'm just going to finish my thought, and then I'll come to you. If the amendment is successful, then I'm going to suggest then that we have a tabling motion to bring it back at the next council meeting. And Director Hines will, which she's waving to me down, she probably has the information. So rather than me finishing my thought, Director Hines, why don't I ask you to speak now?
I'm sorry to interrupt,
okay.
but I just wanted to pass on. I have been emailing staff in the background since the discussion took place, and the files are actually going to the printer on Wednesday. And there has been no discussion with finance staff with reference to adding any sort of insert to the bills. So I'm not certain. I can't comment on where this suggestion was made. But I believe it's going to be very difficult for us to do an insert within the interim tax bills at this time. So I just wanted to provide that information before the discussion got any further.
Okay. So then what we'll have to do is communicate with our regular city channels, as well as maybe some paid advertising to let people know in that part of the city to go to an electronic survey and have those questions. So what we'll do is, Councillor Sanderson, you were trying to get my attention.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So the discussion on mobility transit, while certainly valid, is outside the scope of the motion. The motion that was introduced in December dealt specifically with Transit Route 9, and so mobility service isn't part of that.
Okay, the reason why I raised the question is mobility service is tied to regular transit service. We don't provide mobility service, or we don't provide transit. That was part of the reason why we were bringing forth the expansion of transit into Ward 2, because we were getting requests from both residents of Ward 2 who wanted to use the mobility service, but also residents in Ward 1 who wanted to go to a facility in Ward 2. So that's the reason why I brought that up. But I think, we're not in a big rush to get this approved. Let's see what we can come up in terms of crafting a question. And certainly if you don't believe it's part of the scope of what the notice of motion was, then we can pull it. But we can go from there.
Okay.
All right. So Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to suggest that amending motion that I originally proposed, I withdraw it. I'm just trying to clean up the procedure here, and that I would suggest that the motion as information, and that the proposed questions be returned to staff with a further report to council.
Okay, so
and that would include the questions that I suggested as amendments, including Councillor McCaw's suggestion on the rewording of question 2. And, I would also entertain consideration of the mobility bus service as well.
Great. Councillor Thompson and Councillor Sanderson are the movers and the seconders. Are you okay with that suggestion from Councillor Carr as a friendly amendment?
No.
Councillor Sanderson says no. And Councillor Thompson, well, it doesn't matter. Councillor Sanderson says no. So I appreciate you trying to clean it up, Councillor Carr. I think where we're at right now is let's vote on the amendment, and then we can entertain either the amended motion or a motion to table until the next meeting. Okay, so we have an amendment on the floor.
Point of order. I've technically withdrawn the amendment.
Okay.
And proposed a new amendment.
Okay, so the amendment, the mover of the amendment is proposing to withdraw, which is in order. And unless someone else wants to be the new sponsor of the amendment. Councillor Alsap, you seconded it. Are you willing to have it withdrawn as well? Okay, unless anybody wants to move it. So we're back to the original motion. And if we have the original motion, I'm going to suggest that I'll entertain a tabling motion at this time to the next meeting. And Mr. General Manager Reid and Director Hines and Mr. McDonald have all heard the discussion, and it would come back to the next council meeting. I'm expecting with those changes. Does anybody have any objection to that? Councillor Sanderson?
I was just going to make the motion to table.
Okay, Councillor Sanderson is making a motion to table this item to the next meeting, which will be on January 24th. A seconder on the tabling motion, Councillor Feeney. There is no discussion on a tabling motion, so I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And so just to sort of wrap it up, staff will work on this. Councillor Carr, I would suggest maybe having some communication with staff between now and then, so that the information that comes to us is consistent with what you are looking for. Also work with Councillor McCaw on that question too, to make sure it's, I think she used the word having a negative disposition, making it a little bit more neutral. And then we can see if there's any ability to have any discussion about mobility. Can I also, Councillor Sanderson, you chaired the Transit Advisory Committee. When is your committee meeting again?
Next week.
Next week. Can I suggest that, you know, I've kind of seen this movie before in terms of, you know, we're going to ask residents. I don't want to anticipate, but I have an understanding of what's going to be coming back in terms of those results. And one of the questions that we'll have to deal with at budget is whether we continue regular transit service or not, or an alternative. And I'd like to ensure that your committee considers the on-demand, issue, and that if we were going to move to a simply on-demand service for Ward 2, what would the financial estimates be for the costs? Costs per trip, cost to operate, if there are any other, equipment and logistical issues that we would have to deal with, just so that when we discuss this matter in April at the operating budget, we have all the information there. I wouldn't want to be in a situation where we have the results of the survey, but yet we don't have options to deal with at that point.
So certainly I can bring that forward to the committee, and actually under new business today, I'll be talking about a transit master plan.
Okay, good. All right. Thank you. We got there. So that deals with 8B6. So we'll move on to council information matters, where council may adopt consent items by one motion, but prior to consideration of such motion, members may request that specific items be removed from consideration under such motion, and council shall consider such items individually. So I'll go the other way around the table. Councillor Kelly, any items in 8C that you'd like to pull?
No, thank you.
Councillor Millette. Councillor Millette. Councillor Millette. He says no. Okay. Councillor Feeney. Councillor Carr.
No, thank you.
Councillor Thompson.
No, thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
No, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Alsop.
No, thank you.
And then it was supposed to Councillor Sanderson. He said no, thank you. Councillor McCaw.
No, thank you.
All right. So then we have no items, so that all the agenda items be received. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Feeney and Councillor Kelly, all in favor? It's carried. Motion to rise and report, moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney, all in favor, it's carried. So we're going to deal with our bylaws, and I'm going to deal with bylaw number 2022-02 first separately. We'll do all three readings because Councillor McClaw has declared a conflict. So first reading of bylaw number 2022-02, a bylaw amending zoning bylaw number 3014, being a bylaw to regulate the use of land for buildings at 284 to 286 Maitland Drive. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Feeney. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaw number 2022-02. Can I get a mover, please? It's Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Thompson. Any discussion on this item? All in favor? It's carried. And third reading of bylaw number 2022-02, moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. All in favor? It's carried. We'll invite Councillor McCaw back. And then we'll deal with first reading of bylaws number 2022-01 which deals with 135 Station Street, 2022-03, which deals with 151 Station Street, and 2022-04, which deals with College Street East. Can I get a mover, please? Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Alsap. All in favor? It's carried. Second reading of bylaws number 2022-01, 03, and 04. Moved by Councillor Carr, seconded by Councillor Alsap. Any questions or comments on these bylaws? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? It's carried. And third and final reading of bylaw number 2022-01, 03, and 04. Moved by Councillor Alsop, seconded by Councillor Sanderson. All in favor? It's carried. Okay, we'll move to new business. And let me just start off first, and I'll just say to everybody, Happy New Year. Unfortunately, the new year is looking a little bit more like the old year, a little bit more than we would like it to. It was a difficult decision to cancel the New Year's levy again this year, but I want to thank everyone for their understanding. Certainly the past 2 years have been filled with several ups and downs for all of us. And in the midst of these new provincial restrictions, 2022 hasn't started off in the best foot in terms of getting back to normal. However, I have every confidence that we will come out of the restrictions as soon as the provincial government will permit, and we will continue to move forward with strength and power. We have gotten this far because we care about each other, and this gives me the confidence that we will get through whatever is ahead of us together, one step at a time and one day at a time. I want to take a moment to thank our residents and business owners for adhering to the COVID-19 regulations that continue to be in place. I know these restrictions continue to impact our daily lives, and I appreciate everyone's cooperation. City Hall continues to be open to the public by appointment only, Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And the public is encouraged to utilize online, telephone, and Dropbox services as an alternative to coming into City Hall. Individuals 12 years of age and older wishing to enter city buildings are required to provide personal identification and proof of COVID-19 vaccination to be permitted entry to a city building. The Belleville Public Library continues to be open to the public. However, we are asking patrons to limit their stay to help us reduce the number of people in the building at any given time. Traditional library services and other essentially designated services such as public transit continue to be exempt from the vaccine passport system. The Quinte Sports and Wellness Center is currently closed to the public as per the provincial regulations. However, the staff at the Wellness Center have already created a reopening plan, which starts with ice and pool rentals resuming as early as January the 27th. Updates and modifications will continue to be posted on the website at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. That is at qswc.com. The provincial vaccine booking system remains open, and the vaccination center located at the Quinte Sports and Wellness Center continues to operate under the management of public health and our Quinte Sports and Wellness Center team. As a council, we remain collectively and singularly focused on the safety and health of our residents and all of our decisions, and we encourage all eligible individuals to get vaccinated as soon as possible. Additionally, I want to encourage residents to take advantage of the many outdoor parks and walking trails available throughout the city. Getting outdoors and physical movement are both critical for our mental health. And with that being said, I do want to remind residents that the ice on the Bay of Quinte is still very unsafe. Currents and inconsistent temperatures make it uneven and dangerous. Please avoid it, including no ice fishing, skating, and or other on-ice activities at this point. And as we move forward over the coming days and winter weeks ahead of us, this will change. And until then, I ask for people not to take unnecessary risks, and we will let you know when it is safe. We still remember the tragedy not so long ago by Point Anne because of unsafe ice. Each winter, there are very many completely avoidable deaths when people go out onto unsafe ice, and we don't want to see any more here in Belleville. I ask everyone to please respect our warnings. On another winter-related matter, the Emergency Warming Center has been activated several times this winter and will continue to be open over the coming weeks. The center is operating at the Bridge Street United Church at 60 Bridge Street East and is open from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. on days that the weather forecast activates the space. Hastings County staff oversee the operations of this facility, and there is complete COVID-19 screening protocols in place. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind residents that Hastings County provides housing services to anyone experiencing emergency homelessness every single day of the year, including during the winter. If you or anyone you know needs emergency housing services, please call 1-866-569-1941 for immediate assistance. The Overnight Warming Center is not a housing service. It is simply a service provided during extremely cold temperatures. Housing services include emergency housing as provided to anyone in need through our partnership with Hastings County. And I just want to lastly mention in terms of the activation of the Warming Center, I want to say a very special thank you to General Manager Joe Reed and his staff who sprung into action a week ago looking at some proposed alternatives. I appreciate them giving up their long weekend to do the work of the city of Belleville. And we are lucky to have such hardworking people in our city. With that, I will ask if anyone else has any new business. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And further to your discussion and your update on the in from the cold to the warming center, over the last number of weeks, we've seen a sort of a confusion of where the warming center will be, who's going to activate it, and the county was a very large part of it. And in from the cold is certainly an aspect that needs to be conducted by the county, and they've come forward to it. But there's been a confusion of what temperature it may be. Can we go lower? Can we not? Where it can be hosted. And we've had some discussion possibly of could the Bridge Street host it? Could it be other places that host it? So I'm going to bring a motion here at this point to sort of get the motion going forward so that we can maybe try to resolve this issue on the long term. Not so much maybe on the immediate, but I'd like to try and move it forward to the Community and Human Services of Hastings County. So the motion is that the City Council of Belleville requests through our representative members, councillors on the Community and Human Services Committee by Hastings County, a detailed report to the council and other members, municipalities on the ways and means of establishing a properly staffed, funded, and centrally located facility in which to provide these warming and cooling rooms services that the county, in consultation with members of the Joint Services Committee, work to corroborate solutions that will see the establishment of such facilities in the soonest possible time. Further, that a report exploring operational requirements include financial analysis and potential funding sources, external and internal, for changes in minimum temperature threshold, for example, -5. And that the report finally go to the emergency or go to the Human Services, Community and Human Services for Hastings County and have that report come back to City Council. And I have a seconder for that motion, Councillor Sean Kelly. And I'd like
thank you. Just
any
one moment,
discussion,
please.
and I'd like a recorded vote.
Just one moment, please. Okay, Councillor Thompson, I'm going to rule that motion out of order for two reasons. First of all, Hastings County has already initiated those conversations. We have 4 members of council that sit on the Human and Health Services Committee for Hastings County. And both Warden Phillips and CAO Pine has told me that they are going to be considering a long-term strategy in the month of February at their meeting. And certainly I take it from your items that you're supportive of it. Secondly, you did not give me any advance notice of the motion. If you would have, I would have asked for a copy in writing. As I started to listen to your motion, I got to about the 10th word, and then I've lost the rest of it. The procedural bylaw requires that you provide it in writing. And while we have tried in the past to work with people, your motion is too long, and it's got multiple issues in it. Again, all of us want to be able to know what we're voting on. And, so if you want to provide notice of motion that you'll be bringing it forward at the January 24th motion, I'd be very happy to have you do that next. But it's not fair to us as we consider the matter for you just to, spring it on us this way. But secondly, the committee is already tasked with doing that. And, certainly my comments to Warden Phillips and to Mr. Pine is that we would like a permanent solution that'll be administered by Hastings County as they have the funding sources on our behalf, and that is moving forward. So does anybody else have any items of new business?
So, your worship, so can I sort of comment on that?
Well, the motion's out of order, Councillor Thompson. So if you have something else you'd like to talk about, you can go ahead. You're welcome to, under notice of motions, item 12 on the agenda, bring forth a notice of motion, provided in writing to me today, so that the clerk can have it included in the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, I will provide it as a notice of motion because I still feel it's important.
Okay, thank you.
The
And
county-
is there anything else under new business that you'd like to discuss other than this? Anyone else have any other new business they'd like to raise at this time? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I mentioned when we were discussing the transit survey that I'd be bringing forward an item, the transit master plan. So in 2015, the city undertook a Belleville Transit operations review. And in that review, it noted that Belleville had operated a radial transit system within the city since 1960. However, residential growth in a number of areas within the city boundaries, and more recently Deerfield and Settlers Ridge subdivisions immediately north of the 401 are not currently being adequately serviced by the existing transit system. So, so that was 7 years ago, and the city has grown significantly since that time frame. This council has invested heavily in public transit. We've replaced and added new buses. We've expanded regional transit with Prince Edward County and 20 West, and we've expanded transit, both regular and mobility, into Ward 2. And I do want to take just this opportunity to clear up some misunderstanding that I may have contributed to in our December meeting. So Ward 2 residents have contributed to funding public transit in two ways. One is through provincial gas tax funding, and the second is through residential development charges. Now, one of the items funded through development charges is in fact a transit master plan. And I've had discussions with finance and operations to have this item come to council through the 2022 operating budget process. It's estimated, or it was projected to cost $249,000, and 168,000 of that would be derived from development charges. So we're sort of at a critical stage in public transit. In that the city, we've now reached what I consider a point of stability in our service. And so now the next step is we need to prepare to deal with continuing residential growth in the north, the west, and the east. And also the expansion that's going to occur in the industrial land to the east as well. So at the committee level, we are reviewing, continuing to review the electrification of our fleet. But but I feel we need to have an overall master plan that involves engineering, finance, and operations as we develop the roadmap for the next 5 to 10 years. For instance, and part of this comes into the discussion we're having about the survey. But as we develop new subdivisions, regardless of whatever ward they're contained within, the question of public transit needs to be a component, or at least it needs to be a question that's considered when we're developing subdivision agreement plans. So, you know, whether transit is required, if it's required, where would the rail go? Where would the bus stops be? Also, we need to identify and develop funding sources. So currently public transit is subsidized, but you know, will that or should that continue in the future? And if so, to what level? Should it be 40%, 50%, 60%? I mean, these are questions that need to be discussed. And then the other question, and we sort of touched on it a little bit earlier, is, you know, the whole question of whether we and residents believe that public transit is an essential municipal service. So those questions need to be examined and they need to be answered. And most importantly, of course, we need to fully engage with residents and solicit their input, as we did in the development of the Parks and Rec Master Plan. So the good work on public transit, you know, must continue, and the development of a transit master plan will help guide the direction and decision making, not only for this council, but for future councils. So when that item comes forward to us in the operating plan, or sorry, the operating budget, I would like to, you know, ask for council support of that item. Thank you.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to that coming up. Anyone else for new business? Okay, then we don't have any motions today. So Councillor Thompson, I'll take the motion you read out earlier as notice of motion at this point. If you can send that to Mr. McDonald and myself, and then it'll be included in the agenda for the next meeting.
It's going out momentarily.
Thank you. We don't have any other notice of motion, so announcements. Anyone have any announcements they'd like to make before I do mine? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just wanted to mention a couple of things. I had a conversation recently with Director of Operations at the Gleaners Food Bank, Suzanne Quinlan, and it's been quite a year for them. They finished up in 2021, 21% more on average at the Gleaners Food Bank. 60 families a day use the Gleaners. Just prior to Christmas, they had 32 skids of food. That's a lot of food to organize. They're down staff. Normally there's 9. They're down to 4 at the Gleaners Food Bank. Some of the challenges are volunteers with the pandemic, also childcare with the school closures. Some of the staff are working with their children at home, so they can't be at the food bank. So I just wanted to give a shout out that if you have some time to volunteer, and they do take the COVID protocols at Gleaners Food Bank, they would certainly appreciate your support. So think of that on an average day here in Belleville, 60 families using the Gleaners. So thanks to Suzanne Quinlan and her team there. Mayor, I know you have asked Councillor Thompson to send that notice of motion for the next meeting regarding the warming center and potentially working on a property that will be there year round. I'm hoping tonight to make a few comments about the warming center and those experiencing homelessness in Belleville. Are you okay with that, or would you prefer next meeting when this notice of motion comes up and I'll have a chance to speak to that?
Yeah, I think if you wanna say, you know, thanks to the people who are helping to bring it together and get it going this year, you know, certainly. But if we're going to talk about it in a substantive way, you know, We discussed this at the November meeting. We're going to be discussing at the next meeting. I think that's the time for that discussion. And it's going to be good food for thought for the members on the Health and Human Services Committee as they bring that forward as Hastings County comes up with both a warming and a cooling center going forward.
I can appreciate what you're saying, Mayor, but we've had that conversation, but it still seems there's a lot of work to be done. If you're going to invest in change to actually achieve that, we have to have some goals and impact. And I'm hoping Hastings County and those that are on council, our 4 members, can really bring this conversation to the forefront when they get talking about that in the next couple of weeks. It was a week ago today, Councillor Thompson and Councillor Millette and I met with Steve Vandehoof at the Bridge Street United Church. And thanks to Steve for working with the city. And I know, Mayor, you were on the phone making things happen as well. So collectively, we got things done at the bus terminal, but it's really important that we all see the need. And I'll have more on the next meeting, but it's imperative that we really have a solid game plan in place moving forward, because there were some challenging days around Christmas, and I'm glad it's working. And thanks to Steve and everyone that's involved at the Warming Center for being so kind and caring and leading by example in our city, because they are facing some real challenges. And for those experiencing homelessness, this is home for them, and hopefully a permanent home once they get that support from health officials and the government, that they'll have their own permanent home down the road. That's all I wanted to say. I'll have more on the 24th.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else for announcements? Okay, so as we wrap up 2021, as we're now into 2022 and we're preparing for the rest of the year, I want to extend a very big thank you to the volunteers and staff who made the Festival of Lights program possible this year. It was another huge success and gave many people the holiday spirit as we celebrated this Christmas season. I want to thank Councillors Kelly and Councillor Millette and Councillor McCaw for the hard work they did, as well as the other members of the committee during the holiday season. And it was a wonderful, another wonderful year. Over the Christmas break, we made the difficult decision to cancel the New Year's levy again this year for the second year, where we would normally come together as a community to share good wishes as we celebrate the new year. Rather than gather in person, I provided a virtual address. And for anyone who missed it, my New Year's Day levy video is still available online for viewing. I look back on the year 2021 and discussed how we can look forward to what we can look forward to in 2022. But despite the cancellation of the levy, we have had a busy and productive past few weeks. During the final days leading up to the Christmas break, I was proud and happy to present donation checks to a variety of local organizations on behalf of both the City of Belleville and Alexicon Energy. And these groups included the Salvation Army Christmas Kettle Program, the United Way, the Enrichment Center, formerly the Canadian Mental Health Association, the Children's Foundation, the Three Oaks Foundation, Keep Kids Warm, the Poppy Fund, the Gleaners Food Bank, the Belleville Professional Firefighters Toy Drive, and Christmas Sharing, amongst some others. Particularly, these groups were chosen because they make an impact around this time of the year. So thank you to all those involved in these groups. And we know the funds that were donated will be very well utilized. And I want to thank members of the community for their support of these organizations as we all make our own personal charitable contributions. On December the 15th, I was able to attend the grand opening for MoCo General Boutique at 280 Front Street with Councillors Sanderson and Thompson. Sisters Morgan and Charlotte decided to join forces and open a retail boutique in downtown Belleville. The shop is filled with great gift items, products for babies and kids, as well as moms, and additional treats for anyone to enjoy. Congratulations to Morgan and Charlotte. December the 16th was a very exciting day for Loyalist College and for the City of Belleville. I was honored to join MPP Todd Smith and the Ontario Minister of Universities and Colleges, the Honorable Jill Dunlop, along with college officials and regional mayors, for an important announcement. Loyalist College has now been given the right to grant degrees in a 4-year Bachelor of Science in Nursing program. And this is terrific news for our community, as nurses are critical, and we could not be happier with this new opportunity for potential students. Currently, nursing students at Loyalist College can only complete their first 2 years here and then need to go to other communities for years 3 and 4. Now, with this announcement, they can take the entire program here. And this announcement means that starting in September, students can enroll and start and complete their education here at Loyalist. Students graduating locally means we will have more nurses to draw from. So congratulations to everyone involved, especially Dr. Anne-Marie Vaughn and her team who have worked so hard for this new program. This past Wednesday, I was honored to have the opportunity to start the year off by speaking with the Kiwanis Club of Belleville at their annual luncheon, which is traditionally the first speaking event of the year for the mayor. This year, we had to hold that event virtually. We are so lucky to have this group of dedicated individuals continually working towards a better Belleville, and this year they are celebrating their 100th anniversary. I was also pleased to join the Rotary Club of Belleville last Thursday for a virtual meeting. I want to thank President Daryl Smith and all the members for their warm welcome and for allowing me to share some news about the city of Belleville. Last Friday, January the 7th, I had the privilege of taking a tour of the Altogether Housing Corporation on Great St. James Street, which is currently under construction. This residential building will be ready to open this spring and includes both market rate units as well as subsidized or affordable units. There will be a total of 32 units with a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments. The Enrichment Center will be having some 3-bedroom units on a long-term lease. And this is the 3rd Altogether housing facility in the city, and we anxiously await its opening. It's residential buildings like this that are helping us to meet our city's housing goals and overcome the current housing shortage. Lastly, I'm excited to announce that the Quinte Home and Lifestyle Show, operated by the Quinte Home Builders Association, will be back in 2022. It is scheduled for April the 8th to the 10th here in Belleville at our very own Quinte Sports and Wellness Center. And this annual show is back again, and it's always a huge success. I look forward to this exciting show again this year and the many other activities we can look forward to this year. With that, I'm looking for a confirmatory bylaw, that bylaw number 2022-05, a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council at its meeting held on January the 10th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 10th day of January 2022. Moved by Councillor Feeney, seconded by Councillor Alsop. All in favor? It's carried. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Millette, seconded by Councillor Carr. All in favor?